Well, good morning, and welcome to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. We trust that you are well here on this Wednesday morning. Oh, the helicopter, they've come to get me. Sorry. No. Anyway, we appreciate you being here. A lot, just like always, lots going on. Joy and tragedy all at the same time, and which is what our lives are going to be moving forward. And I think that we have to understand to take as much out of the joy as we can, to be a salve on the tragedy. Today, we're going to get into some events that have happened that are horrific, really. An idiot in North Dakota apparently kills a teenager over some political views. The hell is going on with folks? My governor has made his next choice on where his migrant relocation program is going to send some folks, and the press, the White House press secretary, is not happy. Like I told you, they are trying to sue the governor with a migrant class action lawsuit. Yeah, and we're going to talk about why that's not going to work, so don't worry about that. The DOJ has announced there's going to be charges in the largest pandemic fraud scheme in the U.S. $250 million fraud scheme that exploited the federal government. A program that aimed at feeding needy children during the pandemic. So that'll be interesting. Also, Politico has thrown some cold water on the registration number, the Democrat registration numbers. So we got a lot to get to. So we got to get to it quickly. So we need to do this first, and we'll be back right after these. All right, folks. Thank you ever so much for spending some time here. Remember, the most valuable thing you have is your time. So we're going to get right to it. The DOJ has announced they are filing charges, and again, in the largest pandemic fraud scheme in the U.S. We talked about this a long time ago. Seems like a long time ago. Once COVID became an industry, we were going to deal with a lot of stuff. Once government got involved in making sure that people were taken care of in every other way other than medically, this was going to be a problem. 47 defendants were charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and bribery in the Minnesota operation on the government described as the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. Interesting that it would happen in Minnesota, right? The defendants devised and carried out a massive scheme to defraud the federal child nutrition program. That's the free lunch and breakfast program. The defendants obtained, misappropriated, and laundered millions of dollars in program funds that were intended as reimbursements for the cost of serving meals to children. The defendants exploited changes in the program intended to ensure underserved children received adequate nutrition during the COVID-19 pandemic. Rather than feed children, the defendants enriched themselves by fraudulently misappropriating millions of dollars in the federal child nutrition program funds. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the USDA waived some of the standard requirements for participation in the federal child nutrition program. When you do that, you allow a lot of people who are on the fringes to see an opportunity. Now, some of them did a good job. They were able to get in and do some work in areas that they weren't able to before because they didn't qualify. Because I know that people will watch this and go, or listen to this video and go, well, you know what? We helped out because this system has made it so, or made people think that some of these kids won't eat if it weren't for school lunches. And this is, and frankly, it's kind of what happened, that some of these kids won't eat because they didn't have breakfast at school and they didn't have lunch at school. Because what's happened in a lot of these places, the only meal that parents had to find a way for them to eat was dinner, because they were eating breakfast at school and they were eating lunch at school. And now with the Democrats, to say it that way, closing schools, one of the fallouts from that was that there was no breakfast and there was no lunch. So it created this need for organizations to hop in. So some enterprising criminal says, hey, listen, we can get into this game. And there's all this free government money. Again, because the mentality is that all this money is free. Like it just came out of the freaking sky. So windfall. Because these people never think, and when they do, they don't care, that this money comes out of your wallet. That this money comes out of your wallet. This money comes out of your wallet. To the tune of $250 million. A quarter of $1 billion. Amy Bach was the founder and executive director of Feeding Our Future, a nonprofit organization that was a sponsor participating in the federal child nutrition program. The indictments charged Bach with overseeing a massive fraud scheme carried out by sites under Feeding Our Future's sponsorship. Feeding Our Future went from receiving and dispersing approximately $3.4 million in federal funds in 2019 to nearly $200 million 2 years later in 2021. So they might have been doing okay, and then the money just became too good. As part of the charge scheme, Feeding Our Future employees recruited individuals and entities to open federal child nutrition program sites throughout the state of Minnesota. These sites, created and operated by the defendants and others, fraudulently claimed to be serving meals to thousands of children a day within just days of being formed. So they would just, the need was so great that they opened this place up, and then thousands of kids flocked there. What we're finding out is that wasn't true. Wasn't true. The defendants created dozens of shell companies to enroll in the programs as federal child nutrition program sites. The defendants also created shell companies to receive and launder the proceeds for their fraudulent scheme. So what had to happen, it seemed, they had to open these sites, and then they had to get businesses or fake businesses to provide food, because that's how you get the money. And those businesses got reimbursed, but they never existed. They only existed on paper, and they weren't feeding anybody because they weren't real businesses. To carry out the scheme, the defendants also created and submitted false documentation. They submitted fraudulent meal count sheets purporting to document the number of children and meals served at each site. The defendants submitted false invoices purporting to document the purchase of food to be served to the children of the sites. The defendants also submitted fake attendance rosters purported to list the names and ages of the children receiving meals at the site each day, because you have to go through all of that, to the tune of $250 million. They created a website called www listofrandomnames.com. The roster was created using the names from a website called listofrandomnames.com. Now, okay, so all of you are now going to listofrandomnames.com. I'll just wait here for a second. Other defendants used an Excel formula to insert a random age between the age of 7 and 17 in the age columns of the rosters. Despite knowing the claims were fraudulent, Feeding Our Future submitted the fraudulent claims to MDE and then dispersed the fraudulently obtained federal child nutrition program funds to the individuals and entities involved in the scheme. I wonder where else some of this money ended up. You think some of this money ended up in political campaigns? You think some of this money ended up fraudulently obtained money then was used to purchase cars, international travel, and both commercial and residential real estate? This sounds like Black Lives Matter kind of stuff, right? This was a brazen scheme of staggering proportions. U.S. Attorney Andrew M. Luger for the District of Minnesota said in a statement, these defendants exploited a program designed to provide nutritious food to needy children during the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, they prioritized their own greed, stealing more than $250 million in federal funds, taxpayer funds, to purchase luxury cars, houses, and coastal resort property. Not worried about global warming, apparently. I commend the work of the skilled investigators and prosecutors who unravel the lies, deceptions, and mountains of false documentation to bring this complex case to light. Oh, we warned you. We warned you that whenever the government starts like just passing out money because it was an emergency, there's going to be fraud. There's going to be thievery. We warned you that this kind of thing would happen. I've said for years that I am often saddened, but anymore I am never surprised. Never surprised. All right. We are 49 days away from the midterm elections. And there's at least one left of center publication that can parse what's going on with voter registration and trends. Politico, wow, has a more level-headed take on the surge in new voters that have come into the scene after the Dobbs decision overturned Roe v. Wade. The idea was that the idea of the left was after this happened, the thing was leaked, that would be able to gin up a lot of left support on the left, a lot of Democrat support, right? That was the thing. Liberals were banking that the abortion monster will arise from the depths to ruin the Republicans' 2022 midterm election chances with a lack of a legislative achievement, high inflation, and an economic recession forming the albatross around the Democrats' neck. Abortion is their Hail Mary throw at salvation. Joe Biden's approval numbers remaining in the low 40s and high 30s also doesn't bode well for the party. The abortion hope is a multifaceted and loaded with nuance. Political geography plays a part and doesn't boost the Democrats' chances overall. Doesn't boost the Democrats' chances overall. If hordes of new voters come from coastal areas, cities, and other locations where the Democrat Party is heavily concentrated, the net gain is negligible. And all that means is, so if they get a boost from a place like Los Angeles, New York, the only way that it makes a difference is somehow they get a large gain from somewhere like Georgia or somewhere like Mississippi or someplace like Florida even. The publication also highlighted a crucial point. Even with a surge of new voters that are supposedly breaking for Democrats, there's still a hole as Republicans have dominated the voter registration drives since 2020. New Republican voters and former Democrats have given the GOP an edge for a year and a half. The flip side to that is not all these registrants are going to vote on election day. Of course not. That never happens. It is why the get out the vote operations are more valuable. Registration is important. And I know we've got guys out there who are doing, Scott Pressey, out there who are registering voters. But Scott also knows this, that's one thing, that they'll sign a voter registration slip. That's great. That doesn't mean they're going to vote. So being registered to vote is not enough. Getting a driver's license doesn't teach you how to drive a car. It should, but driving the car teaches you how to drive a car, right? Just because you have a license doesn't mean that you'll drive. Democrats have been on voter registration tear since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. There's just one problem for them. They are digging out from under a major Republican gain in the previous 18 months. For the most of the 2 years leading up to the midterm election, Republicans rather than Democrats were making voter registration gains in key states, thanks to people like Scott Pressey. A political analysis of the state voter data shows a signal of GOP momentum heading into the classic backlash election against Democrats' control of Washington. These gains have not fully offset a GOP advantage built earlier in the election cycle, largely due to party switching that narrowed Democrats' overall registration advantage in places like Pennsylvania from 685,000 voters in November 2020 to now 540,000 voters now. Although the new voter data points to a midterm landscape that has shifted toward Democrats compared to earlier this year, but remains uncertain with just weeks to go until the midterm. Not all people who registered this year will ultimately cast ballots. Of course not. Even in states where the young registrants have surged, voters who signed up in the past year are still expected to make up a small share of the overall electorate in November. So, we don't know. Which means in the next 49, 48 days, it is the get out to vote effort that will mean the most. It is the knocking on doors. It is handing out slate cards. It's getting people in your car or your van and taking them to the polls. And remember, when you do that, you can't feed them beforehand, but you can feed them afterwards. It's that work that must be done if we are going to stop the bleeding or at least slow down the bleeding. It's that work that must be done. Thank you, Scott Pressey and others for the voter registration initiatives. Those are very, very important. But the get out to vote initiatives need to kick in and kick in hard in the next 48 days. Because all of that work will go in the toilet. In the toilet worse than just this cycle. If all those people who got excited about registering to vote see that you lost anyway, what's the incentive for them to participate the next time? People only follow winning teams. Haven't heard much about the Patriots lately, have you? The New England Patriots. Why? Because they're incredibly average right now. There's no Brady. Brady's in Tampa. So you don't hear a lot about them, right? People only follow winning programs. The past week or so, Notre Dame has fallen off. People only follow winning programs. People, and it's terrible. But that's the truth. That's the reality. If you're not winning, no one cares. People know who won the last World Series. People know who won the last Super Bowl. People know who won the last NCAA national championship game. Nobody knows who the losers were. And nobody cares. So the get out to vote is extremely important. Because if you don't win, it doesn't matter. All the politicos, all the people who are involved in all these things, what they do know is that if you don't win, it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as a moral victory in sports or in politics. There's only winning. There isn't anything else. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be back with more of the program right after this. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com and fightbackmediatv.com. We'll be back right after these messages. All righty. Again, thank you ever so much for, I've got stuff in front of the monitor I need to move so I can see what the heck I'm doing. All right. Again, welcome back to the Morning Report. My name is Billy Lawson. The Morning Report is production of fightbackmedia.com, 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 and fightbackmediatv.com. We are thrilled to be with you this morning. Let's get back to the stories. Yesterday, we spent and probably an inordinate amount of time talking about my governor, but this is these are conversations that need to be had because it is important. These are important conversations that will lead us into the general election and point out some really important things that mainstream media had to be forced to point out. You learned yesterday, if you listened or you watched, that, or maybe you learned somewhere else, that Governor DeSantis, a Republican from Florida, sent 50 migrants, illegal immigrants, we're going to say migrants, illegal immigrants, to Martha's Vineyard after they were processed and released by immigration authorities in Texas, and gave them a couple of days of shelter, some food, some water, got them all healed up, and got them information on what Massachusetts, because they consider themselves a sanctuary state, what they'll do, and got them all learned up, and gave them an opportunity to actually go there in a couple of hours, as opposed to try to make that trek by foot. Come on now, flew them on a chartered plane with food and drink water, and then basically said, you are now in the promised land. This is what these people have promised you. There you go. Martha's Vineyard then declares a humanitarian crisis. 50 people. And they have this air on fire moment, which is comical, really, when you think about the amount of wealth that exists on Martha's Vineyard. They just lost their snit. It is just ridiculous. Absolutely outrageously ridiculous. So there has been a class action lawsuit filed on behalf of the migrants flown to, not by the migrants, but on behalf of the migrants, because they can't file a lawsuit because they are not citizens. The lawsuit claims that the flights were a premeditated, fraudulent, and illegal scheme centered on exploiting the migrants for the sole purpose of advancing their own personal, financial, and political interests. Here's what it says. It is opportunistic that activists would use illegal immigrants for political theater. If these activists spent even a fraction of this time and effort at the border, perhaps some accountability will be brought to the Biden administration's reckless border policies that entice illegal immigrants to make dangerous and often lethal journeys through Central America and put their lives in the hands of the cartels and the coyotes, said DeSantis' office on Tuesday. You know, I did a TikTok live video about this yesterday, and one of the commenters that were saying that they were lured there by promises of work. How do you think they were lured to the border? By promises of what? And people say this all the time. They were lured here by promises of a better life. So did the president get on the air and said, get on TV in Mexico or Venezuela or anywhere in Central America and say, come to the United States, just show up at the border. We have jobs. No, he did not. He did not. He did not. So where did these people get the idea that they could come to the US and work? Where did they get that idea? On their own. Where did they get the idea that there were jobs in Martha's Vineyard? And I'm sure there are. And I'm going to be really crass right now. There are probably enough landscaping jobs to employ all 50 of those people in Martha's Vineyard. I know that was ugly. Funny though, wasn't it? It's true. Oh, and for the most part, it was true. The transportation of the migrants to Martha's Vineyard was done as on a voluntary basis. The immigrants were homeless, hungry, and abandoned. Again, they had been processed and released by immigration authorities. Most of them were sleeping on parking lots. Florida's program gave them a fresh start in a sanctuary state, and these individuals opted to take advantage of chartered flights to Massachusetts. It was disappointing that Martha's Vineyard called the Massachusetts National Guard to bust them away from the island within 48 hours. They got the Army National Guard. I don't want to offend anybody in the Army. I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. To get them off the island, took them 2 days. Get these people out of here. We have information that's consistent with the information given to the person who signed it. It was in English and Spanish. The person then wrote they would be leaving Texas and arriving in Massachusetts, highlighting the fact that migrants knew that they would be taken to the state. We have information like that, and this information is going to be on the Fight Back Media website that you can go look yourself. Democrats and progressives have accused DeSantis of everything from kidnapping to human trafficking with his relocation program. Around $12 million was allocated in the state budget to carry out the program. So when people are saying, well, he didn't have the right to do that in the budget, well, except that he did. When when the left is saying that DeSantis is more dangerous than Trump, to them, they're right. They're right. Now, a lot of you who watch and listen are die-hard, dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporters. But I'm going to tell you, DeSantis is smarter than Trump. He's more savvy than Trump. He's every bit as hard-edged, probably more hard-edged than Trump. Without the Trump baggage. So the left, like I tell you all the time, folks, will always tell you who they are afraid of. And they are scared witless of Ron DeSantis. And frankly, they should be. Because, dude, they have notified, not Ron DeSantis, but his folks have notified the Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre that they are sending a plane load of illegal immigrants to another sanctuary state, Delaware. We've been coordinating the folks in Delaware, the officials in Delaware. What I can tell you is that the heads up did not come from Governor DeSantis, because his only goal, this is Jean-Pierre, his only goal is, and he's made really quite clear, to create chaos and use the immigrants fleeing communism and political pawns. Now they're worried about communism, the same sort of communism that they're trying to, anyway. So it's about creating political theater for him. It's not about getting to a solution, says Jean-Pierre. This is a political stunt, but we have been in close contact with the Delaware government. The idea of choosing Delaware to be the next drop-off point would bring the ongoing crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border to President Biden's doorstep, as it is his home state, and very often leaves the White House to go vacation there. Goes home. It's less than an hour trip, so on a plane. So of course he goes there to vacation, goes there, goes home. The flight to Delaware will be shortly after the first set of flights dropped off around 50 immigrants to Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. Florida's program seeks to identify immigrants at the southern border who have been processed by the feds and connects them with voluntary opportunities to reach sanctuary destinations in high wealth areas that support Biden's open border policies, welcome immigrants, and have significant resources to care for those individuals. What have I been saying? These are places that say they support immigrants and we shouldn't have these borders and border walls are immoral and all this stuff. Why? Because they are thousands of miles away from it. It's easy to say there. It's super easy to say that when you're not in a border town of 30,000 people and 1,000 people show up at your door every day that you have to take care of. Super easy to say from Delaware, incredibly easy to say from Martha's Vineyard. It's very, very easy to say from New York or Chicago when you're thousands of miles away that you are a sanctuary city. From San Francisco, fairly wealthy city, thousands of miles away from the border. Easy to say. But now these people have to put up or shut up. And they've not done well initially. They've just not done well initially. Florida is not a sanctuary state. We will continue to facilitate a program to assist the transportation of illegal immigrants to sanctuary cities and states across the country. You would think they would be happy. The sanctuary states and cities would say, bring them. Okay. Florida's like, all right, we put aside 12 mil to make sure we can get these folks to you. This is what you want. Turn these 50 people into Democrat voters. As we remind them that you didn't come get them, we did. All right. Please see the irony and the humor in all of this, because people are freaking out. People are losing it. When your political position becomes your entire identity. And when we have the president saying that MAGA Republicans are a threat to our nation. These freedom-loving patriots who only want government that works for them, better trade deals, more jobs, fewer taxes, are a clear and present danger that must be crushed. And yet, we're not the people who are killing people over political disputes. The left used January 6th riot to smear Trump supporters as violent insurrectionists. Still, the only person that was killed inside the Capitol building was Ashley Babbitt, whose officer-involved death continues to be plagued with lingering questions. These inquiries will remain, but one act of political violence will probably go under the radar due to its location, but that doesn't make it less relevant given the war cry bellowed by the president. In McHenry, North Dakota, a 41-year-old man has allegedly ran down an 18-year-old man over a political dispute, killing him. He was reportedly drunk at the time of the attack. To make things more bizarre, the alleged perpetrator called the police on himself and admitted to killing the North Dakota teenager. He is held on $50,000 bail since he claimed he wasn't a flight risk, as if that means anything in a potential homicide investigation. The victim reportedly called his mother before his death, asking for help as he noticed the man chasing him down. Here's the story. Prosecutors alleged moments before he was killed, 18-year-old Kaylor Ellingson called his mom to come rescue him because 41-year-old Shannon Brandt was chasing him in the city of McHenry, where the street dance had just wrapped up. By the time she could get there, her son was dead. Brandt was officially charged Monday with vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of a deadly accident. Ran him over in a car. Court paper showed that Brandt called 911 around 2:30 a.m. Sunday and told the 911 dispatcher that he had just hit Ellingson, claiming the teen was part of a Republican extremist group that was calling people to come get Brandt after a political argument. Ellingson's mom told police that her son called just before the crash, asking if she knew Brandt, which she does. She does not believe her son knew him. We were trying to determine what exactly transpired at the time of the crash and prior to that as well, explained Niewind. Police say Brandt was drunk when he hit and killed Ellingson with his SUV. We do not know of any witnesses. We are still making attempts to interview potential witnesses from the street dance, people that were present prior to the crash happening. Niewind said. A loser twice the victim's age couldn't handle a political argument, so he allegedly kills him. That sounds like a rational individual. Whether they live in the cities or rural America, the left is just unspooled. Imagine had that been opposite on the political side. Trump would get the blame for it. That this young man's death would be at the door of Trump Plaza, wouldn't it? All right, we got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, take care of yourself. We'll see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.